Hello, everyone, and welcome to 2026, which is going to be, well, we may be a big year for Atlas. We don't know. That's what we're here to talk about, though. I am here with my good friend Nathan,
Hi, nice to meet you guys.
and
I'm sure you
yeah,
know
so
me on Twitter.
obviously we're both really big in Atlas and Persona. Nathan also a huge fan. It's gonna be an exciting year. I mean, obviously in a few days we have the Persona 5 concert, or the Persona concert, first one they've done in the U.S. or outside of Japan, actually, in general, which we'll
Yeah.
both keep going to. So that's an exciting way to kick off this year of Atlas. But I think before we get into the plans for the rest of the year, we should sort of look back on 2025 for Atlas as a whole, because it was kind of like an off year for the most part, right?
In terms of like how their year has been, 2024 was definitely their biggest year, but 2025 was more of like a, kind of just staying on the down low and just not really putting anything too crazy. It's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, and if you think about 2024, which is kind of crazy, because we got 3 Reload at the start and then Metaphor at the end. So those were like huge releases for them. I know this year I think was always, or last year was always going to be kind of like a stopgap year. I mean, the only release we really got besides, P5X, which is like debatable if you can really say it's Atlas, because it's really just, it went global,
Yeah.
is the Raito remaster, which, I didn't get
Oh,
much time to
actually,
play because last year was so stacked, but I heard very good things, and I know the director was saying, like, if it did well, they'd like to do the sequel to Raito. So hopefully that, I don't know if we ever got sales figures on it, but
I think we got like early Japan sales figures. It did decent. It wasn't like anything too crazy. I would have to pull up the actual numbers, but in terms of releases, we had that, and then we also had Persona 3 Reload on Switch 2, which released in October.
right. And it's interesting because, like, you and I were gonna really talk about, we plan on doing a video, like, 2025, what the Switch 2 means for Atlas, and, it sort of got pushed back, but, like, yeah, it's kind of weird because, like, I kind of assumed that there would be way more news with Atlas supporting the Switch 2. Like, 3 Reload being on there is huge for sure, and it is nice that it got patched up now to, like, run better.
Yeah,
But
it's still
I'm
not
kind of
perfect, but it's a lot
interested to
better.
see. Yeah, I feel like February, when we get our, like, other major, like, Switch 2 Direct, it's gonna be, like, interesting to see if Atlas really has anything on there. But yeah, kind of a quiet year because obviously they did a lot in 2024. Obviously the other thing in 2025 for Atlas was they had the alpha footage of you walking for Persona 4 Rewind, which we'll get into when we get into the anniversary stuff. But yeah,
I can't
really
wait for
quiet
that.
year. I kind of, like, definitely expected them to do more with Metaphor because it was the 1-year anniversary, and all they really said was, like, here's an art book and, like, round 1 arcade stuff. And I don't know, like, I really liked Metaphor, and I think it did really well, reviewed well. I'm kind of, like, in my head, I'm, like, surprised that they didn't, like, keep up the momentum afterwards, but not that, like, it has to last forever, like P5 or P4 or whatever, but I was just kind of surprised because they pushed it, like, extremely hard when they were marketing that game.
Did you were you up like awake during that live stream when they were like announcing all those like random collabs and stuff?
Yeah, I stayed up for it because I'm like, I'm up, I might as well keep up for it, and it was just like nothing happened.
I did the same thing too.
Yeah, so whatever that was about. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, obviously a quiet year to get us into, like, the main topic, which is this year, 2026. I guess obviously the elephant in the room is the Persona 30th anniversary, which, before we get into that, I'd like to go back and, like, the last anniversary was like was the 25th, right? And I'm trying to
Yes, in
remember, like,
2021.
yeah, so obviously kind of an awkward year because, like, just coming off of COVID, I'm sure that messed up plans for sure. But I'm trying to remember, like, let's link back to, like, what we actually got that year. It was mainly a lot of the ports. Like, I know P4 Ultimax, P4 Arena Ultimax, that one getting ported, that was a big one, that was exciting. It got the better netcode later, and
It was that game was actually kind of interesting.
Royal and P3P, were those ports that year as well, right?
Yeah, so how their year went basically was they announced the anniversary like right in the middle of summer. I'm pretty sure it was like in July because I remember I was at work and I saw it get announced. And then we got our first announcement all the way, our actual first announcement at the Game Awards when they announced Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, which I thought that trailer was always kind of funny because, like, at the time, Persona 4 Golden was only available on PC, and anyone on console just, like, at that point couldn't play the game unless they had a Vita or a PC. So the way they started the trailer off was like, have you ever wondered what happens after Persona 4 Golden? So like most people didn't get to experience it, and I think that's part of the reason why that game didn't necessarily do the best, because that's like kind of the way they revealed the game as like a sequel to Persona 4, and I mean technically, it is, but it's also like a spin-off fighting game.
Mhm.
But yeah, so we got that in December. That was announced. It came out in March, and then at that time we had I think pretty much really nothing besides like some random collabs which they announced as like huge announcements that they would hype up, and nothing really came from that. And then we had the Xbox showcase, which was the arguably, I'd say, like, besides Persona 3 Reload, one of their biggest announcements ever, where we got the announcements of Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal coming to all platforms. Well, actually, at the time, it was just Xbox, and then they slowly announced it for Steam and PlayStation, and then later on,
Switch and
Nintendo
that
had their own
direct,
direct.
right?
Yeah.
That partner showcase, right?
Yeah, they made a huge deal out of it, too, because it was the last
It was the
announcement in
last
that
thing,
direct.
right?
Which made a lot of sense because people were like begging for years for that game to get ported.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was pretty much their 4 big announcements, and then around that time we mostly just got like cool art pieces, which I hope we still get this year because I really love looking at those. They brought back Shop Atlas. I remember around that time because it went. I think they shut down Shop Atlas. I think like 1 or 2 years prior, and then they finally brought it back, and we got like a cool like a collection of merch and stuff from that. But I think besides that, there really wasn't too much. I know like the biggest problem for people during that anniversary was just mainly the pacing.
Yeah, that
and
is
I think
something
that has
we'll
to do with
get
COVID.
because like
Mhm.
that anniversary, I think, like kept a lot of people, even though there were like some lame things, there were a lot of people that like kept people hopeful throughout the whole duration because of the rollout of like a new announcement this date, we'd get something, new announcement later date. Like they would like they spaced it out and they're like, oh, throughout the year we'll have these consistent big announcements, but it sort of played into like when they weren't, it's like, okay, like the hope was like dwindling. Not to say that the ports were like not exciting. Obviously, like that was a really big deal for the franchise and something people had really wanted for a while. So I do think that was exciting for a lot of people, but I think like the pacing was like the biggest issue for a lot of people, because I think it got people's hopes like astronomically higher and higher, and then like when a lot of the lamer stuff that like didn't really matter to a lot of people like happened, it just kind of felt like worse. And like, yeah, that's sort of where we're at now, because in 2026 we have the 30th anniversary, we have the website, and we already have the first thing being like, hey, first announcement January 8th, which this is before
4 days from now.
as the time of recording is before that, and we already like sort of think it's Persona 5 fitness boxing, which is like, is that really the first announcement you're gonna start off with? Like, to me, it's like, look, I get it. Like, I guess it's a new Persona game, but I think it's like one of the least exciting things for a lot of people. So it's like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on like how on that the first announcement sort of, and then what you think will be done for the rest of the year?
So in terms of Persona 5 fitness boxing being teased, I think that's kind of an announcement I would see like maybe in like the middle of the anniversary. It doesn't really feel like something you'd want to start your anniversary with or like end your anniversary with. At least in my opinion. I don't know what Atlus is doing over there, but I don't feel like a lot of people really are gonna care about this game, if I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I think it's gonna have its fans, obviously. I don't know, like whoever enjoys fitness boxing. I'm sure some people do, and I'll probably give it a try maybe if it's fun.
Like, I've played the Hatsune Miku fitness boxing, and like it's fun for what it is, and like it is a decent exercise tool. I think for me, it being P5 specifically is like, you just released like Reload, which has Aki, who is the boxer, and it's like, I get Makoto as like the fighter too, but you could have easily done it just Persona fitness boxing, and you could add music from like 3, 4, 5, whatever, right?
Why limit it to just 5?
Yeah, why limit it to just 5 is like my confusion over it. But yeah, I mean, even though that's the first announcement, obviously there's gonna be more throughout the year. I'm curious, for me, do you think this is the year they do anything with P1 and 2? Every fan poll, all the surveys are like, everybody's like something with P1, P2. Something.
There's that image.
And it's like, they just never budge. And we are also coming off of, I don't follow the game as much as I used to when it came out, but P5X was even like, hey, if we could do something with P1, P2, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so in terms of Persona 1 and 2, there's actually a few things I want to say that you just mentioned. So In terms of remasters left, we don't have too much left in terms of like what they could bring back. It's not like a Mega Man situation, you know, where they're like constantly making these collections and there's like still a bunch of stuff you can do with the series. But Persona wise, you only have Persona 1 and 2, which are the obvious ones that should happen. And then you have the Persona Q games on 3DS, which would take a bit of work, but we got the Etrian Odyssey collection, which released like 2 years ago, and that kind of proved that, you know, you can make those games work on consoles. Although I think specifically those games released on Switch and Steam, so I don't know if they would put those on PlayStation and Xbox, which I don't know why they didn't release on there. And then you have finally the dancing games, which, in my opinion, it would be cool to have them on everything, but I feel like those games probably need the most work because the way Persona 3 Dancing and Persona 5 Dancing, specifically Persona 5 Dancing released, they felt pretty half-baked. So.
Yeah.
And they didn't include anything from any other spin-offs because they wanted to push it out as like the first spin-off for Persona 5. So it was only just base P5 music, nothing from Royal, nothing from Strikers, nothing from Tactica, nothing from Phantom X. But yeah, so I think Persona 1 and 2 wise, if they were gonna do anything besides, you know, what I'm gonna mention later, I feel like that's probably, in my opinion, the most likely option because those games wouldn't take like quite as much work as the other, you know, ones that I mentioned, because you know they have the PS1 versions of those games, which I'm gonna be honest, besides like the music and the UI, I kind of don't like playing those versions. So I think they'll probably go with the PSP versions because those are already in widescreen. Besides Eternal Punishment, which needs a localization, because that's weirdly how that worked is Innocent Sin on PS1 was only in Japanese. And then it got localized for PSP, but they didn't do Eternal Punishment, which was localized already on PS1. They didn't do it for PSP, so they're gonna have to localize that one game.
Like we only got we didn't get the first game. We got the second game on PS1, and then the first game was on PSP. And like you're right, like I think those PSP ports are like sort of the weird elephant in the room because it's like I know that the P3P port like was kind of half-baked as well. It's not really like the best way to play it, but like it's there at least as an option. And like a lot of people were like, well, that was like the PSP version of 3, so surely they'll do 1 and 2 at least port. And I think where I'm at is with you is like bare minimum. I think like just if you can find some way to bring the P1 and then the duology of P2 games from the PSP, I think a lot of people would just be happy just to even have those versions just readily available because like, yeah, it's like you said, again, it's them being trapped there is weird. And like also, yeah, they never localized one of them, which would like that'd be really nice because like if you would compare it to something like what Capcom does, like they just had the Ace Attorney Edgeworth games, and one of those games was never localized, and they localized it for that collection specifically.
Those were on DS,
so I
right?
do think that there would be something like that at some point for both of those.
In terms of how they're gonna do it, ideally I feel like they would just like throw all 3 of them in a collection because, you know, they're old ass games, but they'll probably release them separately for like $20 or something, like they did with P3P. But yeah, no, those games, they're different from how Persona 3 Portable is because that game uses 3D assets, including, you know, besides the 2D assets you obviously see for most of the game. But since Persona 1 and 2 are pretty much mostly, besides like the environments, they're all just 2D assets, you could probably have like an easy time remastering those because they wouldn't take too much work. And something you mentioned earlier, actually, which would be kind of cool, is so the developers for P5X mentioned that if, you know, there's enough like requests and stuff, they would consider including Persona 1 and 2 in the game because currently they're doing a Persona 3 Reload collab on the Chinese servers, which we're going to get later this year. But they said they would do Persona 1 and 2 if there was enough demand. I think if they were to do that, that'd be like somewhat kind of like a good way to market Persona 1 and 2 in a way, just like towards people who might not be familiar with those games. And it would just be kind of cool, I guess, just to see those characters get like brand new 3D models after so long. Actually, there's something I wanted to mention quick before we move on. So in terms of Persona 1 and 2, I don't know if you remember, they had this, I think it was like a poll in Japan, and this image released afterwards of like the most wanted remakes or remasters. And in that list, we got, for number 1, it was tied between Persona 3 and Persona 2, and then third place was Persona 1, fourth place was Persona 4, which is happening, and also Reload happened. And then later down that list, we had Raido and Etrian Odyssey, which both happened. So I feel like they want to remake those games, but they just aren't. They necessarily don't know how they want to remake them because the way those games work, they're much different than how Persona 3, 4, and 5 work because you have the calendar system, you have the social links, you have all that, and it might not necessarily be appealing to specific people because they might not just it just might not feel the same. Um, but I feel like if they were to remake those games, they should try to keep them as faithful as possible, like how they did with Reload. And I assume what they're doing with Persona 4 Revival. I haven't seen anything that makes me question if it's going to be a faithful remake or not. But I feel like they want to touch, they just want to touch those games finally after so long, but they just don't know how. But I think a remaster would probably be like a good step in the first direction, just to get the games out there in some way.
Obviously, the only other thing I think, that is like we can address. Obviously, we talked about the P4 remake, P4 Rewind, Revival. I always think it's Revival. I think. Obviously,
Yeah, it's Revival.
And we had some of the staff talk about oh, we're excited to see more in 2026, blah 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 blah, years, I hope for the year, but it's such a weird. It's so weird because I have no idea how far along that game really is in development, considering that like I said, the footage we got was so underbaked. It's is it gonna happen this year or next year? I feel like the end of this year is lofty. I don't think it's impossible, but it's that footage we got just didn't look like it was far along at all, right?
Yeah, so actually there was something I wanted to bring up about that because it was, I think, in the end of year surveys they do for developers and stuff. The producer, or not, either producer or director, I'm probably gonna mess this up. Wada, he in an interview he mentioned that next year we would be seeing some kind of information on Persona 4 Revival, but I'm not sure exactly what kind of info that's gonna be. I think we could see maybe another trailer that showcases the game further along. But in terms of how far that game is in development, it didn't really look like it was that far in development. It looked like they were just very early on because you could tell by Yu Narukami's model it looked pretty early. They only showed him running for a few seconds, and people also pointed out afterwards that some of the assets were reused from Persona 3 Reload, which that's completely fine if you're gonna reuse assets, do it in a smart way. But in terms of if we're gonna see it this year, it's kind of up in the air. I don't think it's gonna release this year because I feel like it still feels a little too early, especially after Reload, because Reload really wasn't that long ago, and we just got the Switch 2 port of it. So I think if we're gonna see Persona 4 Revival, it's gonna be a trailer for it that showcases a little more of the game, but we're not gonna get a release date or just anything else besides that. I think they're gonna probably save that game for next year, in my opinion, because I feel like it'll probably be closer to completion by then.
Yeah, I feel like we'll get. They never said what the info was. There's also a rumor that maybe it's a little being outsourced a little bit, which is I don't know how true that is. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously it's again the time frame of when this would have been even starting development. It's they had Metaphor and Reload going on, and they even said, because remember when we got the Answer DLC, they were we didn't really plan on doing the Answer DLC, but there was a lot of cry from fans that we wanted to put it out there, and that's why there was sort of a big gap, because it's didn't seem like it was really intended to be made. But I'm glad we got it. But then it's okay, so then who was working on the 4 remake? When was it being made? It's I definitely think this year we get a more comprehensive trailer when the game's actually in a state, but it's I don't know, it feels, I just hope it's I hope that it is something they take their time with, and if they're gonna do it, it's either comes out when it's ready, because it's my fear is I don't, and it's not they really did this with the last anniversary, but there's always a worry. It's oh, are they gonna try and rush it out the door to have it in time for the 30th, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really think they're gonna do that, but that's always something you have to keep in mind, if especially because Sega has done stuff like that before. But yeah, I mean, I'm still very curious about it, because it's my thoughts on a P4 remake are, it's the port they did for Golden just recently was really good.
It was really good.
And they added a lot of quality of life stuff to it. And it's to me, it's I don't see what they would need to do in a P4 remake to not to say it would need to be justified, but it's sort of how do you reinterpret it when it's the game is already so good? And I mean, and it's to be fair, there's been remakes like that before. Resident Evil 4 was like a game that was ported to everything, beloved, really good, still held up. And then they still did a remake of Resident Evil 4, and that was like a really, really good remake because it sort of built off of what the last game did and reinterpreted certain things. So it's like, it's not impossible for a P4 remake to do something similar, especially because Reload was a really good, enjoyable time. It's just sort of like, what would they change? It's like the core, I guess they could build off of Reload and have like the baton passing, maybe the third G system, something like that. I think obviously like, I don't know how much they're gonna really rewrite it. Like, I hope they don't like go super heavy-handed on the rewriting, but it's like, yeah, I don't know what I really want from a P4 remake, and then like, that's like where I'm at with it. It's like, I'm just more curious than I am like excited, where it's like, you know, like I said, P4 very important to me, very beloved, and like I think it still holds up, especially with the golden port. So now I'm like, what would they even change? So it's like, do we need one? I don't think so. Am I interested? Sure, because it's like I don't know what direction they'll go, right?
It's kind of a hard discussion with Persona 4 because, like you mentioned, it's already the game. Persona 4 Golden's already in like a really good state. You can pick up that game easily. It's like, honestly, the only thing I'd say that's dated with that game is like the visuals, which even then, the remaster did a pretty decent job with like, you know, how the game looks on modern platforms. It's still a PlayStation 2 game, of course, but like, besides visual wise, there isn't really too much, I guess, that you could change. I don't know if people would really want them to touch the dungeons that much, because I know there's always people saying like, hey, I want these dungeons. You know, actually, I think they mentioned this with Tartarus before Persona 3 Reload released. People wanted Tartarus to be like built like palaces in P5, which honestly I felt like that was too much work to do because you have like over 200 floors, and that just seems unrealistic. But in Persona 4, it's a little bit different because you have specific different dungeons. It's not like a one big area that you're climbing or going down like Mementos or Tartarus. So it could be a little more realistic to see that in Persona 4 Revival, but I don't know if the game really needs that, because I mean,
yeah, and I mean,
the
like,
dungeons are fine.
Actually, like, now that you mention it, that's a really good point, because like, if you think about P5, everything with Futaba was basically like a P4 dungeon, like thematically speaking, right? Because like you have Shadow Futaba, which obviously the Shadow Self is a big part of P4, and like that dungeon's like all themed. It's like the palaces are all themed. Like, it's not a stretch to say that they could definitely like reinterpret the P4 dungeons in like a style similar to the P5 palaces, right?
It would
like
be
that's
cool.
something they could do. But then like the other aspect of that is like, how much does P4 sort of like lose a lot of its identity? I don't know. Like, but again, it's like, I think people should be like willing to accept like a lot of changes. Like, here's the thing, like I think people should be willing to accept a lot of changes in a P4 remake because the base game is so good at like, it'd be interesting to see like they interpret it in a different direction. So it's like, we already know that it's going to be a new voice cast. I mean, they did it for 3 Reload. We already know some of the voice actors aren't coming back for, at least for now, we know they aren't coming back for whatever this P4 remake is. I feel like if you're going to do a remake of P4, you kind of do have to sort of like more radically change things up to where it feels like a different game, because it would definitely make it feel more like justified. Because it's like, if it's just like, imagine like it's like a remake and it's like, oh, I'm just playing P4 Golden again with like better visuals, when it's like, yeah, that's cool, because it's like, obviously Reload looks incredible, the animations are incredible, but also it's like, do I really need to play it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, obviously I'd still be excited, but I think like I'm at a point where I'm interested to see what they do, and I wouldn't mind it if they did something like more different with it, right?
I'd be totally for that, because in my opinion, I wouldn't really, I honestly, I don't really care about like going into a different direction with actually, I don't know how I want to phrase this. In my opinion, I feel like changing the dungeons is probably, in my opinion, I feel like it's for the better, because, you know, it offers a different experience than what you can already, you know, experience with Persona 4 Golden. But like in terms of changes, I can't really, it's just really hard to like think of what they could possibly do besides like just the dungeons themselves. I mean, I guess they could add more like social elements with certain characters. Like, I know they added the what was it called? You know, like the those extra episodes you had like with the male cast in Persona 3 Reload?
Yeah, like
or the male side of the cast?
The hangouts, because like, you know, obviously they didn't have social links in the original, and then they only kind of had social links with the female pro tag who wasn't in Reload, so they kind of compromised, and they gave like the extra hangout sessions where you could like get the extra upgraded third Gs and stuff like that in Reload. But like 4 didn't have that issue. I mean, you had pretty extensive social links of everybody, pretty extensive hangouts, because like even Golden had the Second Awakenings, And Golden added a lot of extra moments like activities like the quiz show and like other stuff at Junes. There was like a bunch of other stuff that like Golden added that were extra hangout events. So actually, wait, that's a good point. So we know that like 3 Reload wasn't really like a remake of like FES or P3P. It was like a remake of sort of like base P3 with elements added, right? What did they do for this remake? Do they like, is everything from Golden here? Is Marie a character? Is Marie something?
I think
like,
she is.
You know what I mean? Like, what? I'm curious on that front. Is like, is how much is this gonna be like factoring in Golden? Is Marie gonna be there? Are they gonna take stuff from Golden into this game, or is this gonna be like this is just a reinterpretation of base P4?
With Reload, I'd argue that that game kind of leans more into Persona 3 FES because you had, changes from that game because FES added Aegis' social link, which I'm pretty sure was not in the original Persona 3.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And then you also had some other like things in there, and then I think they also removed specific features from FES, like the being able to use different weapons, which honestly, in my opinion, I kind of was upset they did that, but
yeah,
I kind of get why, because it's a lot of different animations you have to work into the game. But I feel like for Persona 4 Revival specifically, I think they're gonna include all the Golden content right off the bat. It would just be really weird to just like remove that. And I know there's people saying like, hey, they could make Marie DLC or whatever, and I don't think that's even gonna work because she's more intertwined into the game itself rather than how episode Aegis is, where it's like a separate thing you can choose from the main menu. It's not like Marie's content in the game isn't like something like that. It's something that's more like it. Honestly, I would compare it more to like how Persona 5 Royal did its extra content, because it's pretty similar. Like you have the new characters like intertwined more into the main story throughout the game.
Yeah, like
you see them
Kasumi
often.
couldn't be DLC. Like you could argue
that just wouldn't
maybe
work.
Maruki stuff because it takes place after everything. Like you could have been DLC, but like these characters were like interwoven throughout the plot of the main game, like Marie was. So it's like you can't really like remove Marie and sell her later, So
That
like
just doesn't work.
yeah, it just doesn't work. So I do think that they do have to. That might be a part of a reason why this game might be more of a endeavor than like Reload, only because it's like there is like a lot of extras that they have to build on that's like tied to the game. Because like remember, like I said earlier, like episode Aegis and the answer stuff for Reload, like they were very transparent. They're like, oh, like a lot of fans asked for this, like it wasn't our intention, but we're gonna get it out, right? And that's not something you can really do for Golden. That has to sort of be there at the start. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Revival on the P4 remake. Is there anything else that like you can think of like you'd want to add?
Oh, okay, so there is one more thing I want to mention. So, you know how with Persona 3 Reload we got brand new outfits for the main cast? Do you think we're going to get that in Persona 4 Revival? Because I feel like it's a little harder to do, because, you're literally walking through Junes, so I don't know how the hell that's going to work.
Yeah, I don't know, like, sort of the new outfits were kind of like the Seize gear. They added that one scene in Reload, like the extra outfits. I don't know if that's something that like is gonna be a huge fact. I mean, I would be curious how they do it, because like obviously the big thing of P4 are the glasses, and everyone gets their own glasses, and that's sort of like the styles for the characters. Maybe there'll be something where it's like Teddy makes something extra for their outfits for combat, or like something for the TV world. I don't know what they'll do. Like that's why I said like I'm curious what they would like add or like change in that regard, because it's like there's a lot of like, I guess there's a lot of freedom with like the themings of P4 and like the TV world aspect, but I don't know how much they want to lean into it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For sure. Other than that, like, obviously, I wonder if they're gonna like get a new vocalist, because 3 Reload had a new vocalist. And to do new stuff. It seems like now we know that actually wasn't the P4 singer was like actually in the studio like way more like years ago. It's like almost like a year and a half ago. Like she was like in the studio, so they probably have her back for something.
Yeah, so I think that she's gonna return, because one of the first things we saw that was kind of like, in my opinion, teasing the P4 Revival announcement was I think, what's her name again? I'm trying to remember what the vocalist name is for Persona 4.
Shiroko. I believe it's Shiroko Hirata. Shiroko. I know Shiroko is part of her name for sure.
Yeah. So she tweeted out, I think it was either a tweet or like a post on some social media place, but she was, saying that, she was just wrapped up recording, and the studio that she posted was a studio they specifically have used for a bunch of different Atlus titles, mainly Persona stuff. And I feel like it would just be really weird for her to like post that and the project that she's working on to be something not Persona related, because I feel like she's definitely going to be returning, unlike how it was for Persona 3, because I feel like the reason why we got a vocalist change was because the original voice actor Yumi, she was I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure she was retiring from
she's up
she was
there,
doing,
Yumi. Yeah, she's up there in years too. Like she's a bit older too, and that was like another reason why she like wasn't as active at the time. But yeah, I do think like Shiroka, she's definitely is more active. Obviously, she was recording not too long ago for something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we can go on to like what else for the anniversary. I mean, the big talk is, you know, obviously P6 is the elephant in the room. Address me. But realistically speaking, I mean, at most, like Game Awards December, we see like the P6 teaser. I do not see this game coming out till like 2027 earliest, right? Like, I don't know.
It's it's kind of weird because I still feel like the best place to announce Persona 6 is the Game Awards. I don't think you should announce that game at an Xbox showcase. I don't think you should announce that game even at a Nintendo Direct, even though it would be big, or even a PlayStation, whatever the hell they call it now.
A state of play.
Back when they were teasing P5X on social media, a lot of people, including I think it was the Discord Twitter account, tweeted like they thought this was like Persona 6 or something, and that's why that tweet got so much attention. It got like I think it got like 100k likes. So there's a lot of people who are like really excited for Persona 6 to eventually happen. But I feel like the best place to obviously announce it would be the Game Awards, because that's where the most eyes are on like video game announcements. It just makes the most sense. But I feel like at this point it has to be this year where they announce it, because the series is turning 30 years old. Persona 5 in Japan at least is going to be turning 10 years old in September as well. So it's been pretty much like a decade since the last mainline game, which that game got announced during, I think it was it wasn't announced. It was released during the 20th anniversary. At this point, it kind of has to happen. Like, you can't really drag it out too much longer because it's been so long since the last mainline game. And in the meantime, we've mostly just been getting remasters, ports, some spin-off games here and there.
In terms of like P6, it's like we know they were all hands-on for like Metaphor and P3 Reload. So like that sort of explains why P6 also took so long. I think they've been working on it in the background, and like what the point I was like explaining was like, because I've said this to other people, I think Atlus is at a point where like they don't want to announce things unless they're like certain they know when it comes out, because like they've had that issue for so long. Like P5 obviously famously development hell, they announced it and it came out so much later. SMT5, another case of like, here's the thing, we don't get anything for like ever. And then there's like what was I gonna say? I mean, even Metaphor was like teased very early, and we heard nothing until it was like ready to reemerge with like a release date and everything, because there was a lot of people talking about like when that project was going down. So now it's like, I think it's gonna be like that for P6, where it's like, hey, we don't want to announce anything unless we are absolutely know when it will be set to release, right?
Yeah, no, I feel like that's probably what they're gonna do, is they're gonna try to like announce it as close to the release date as possible. I think if I remember correctly, I think the first game they started doing that with was like Soul Hackers 2. I might be wrong, but I remember when they announced that game, it was like near the start of the year. I think it was like in February, and that game was releasing in August, which was like kind of crazy at the time, because Atlus was mostly known for like announcing their games like super early in advance, and we wouldn't be seeing them for years, and people would like constantly be asking, hey, is this game still like being developed? Was it canceled? Is it still exist? But yeah, so in terms of Persona 6, I feel like it definitely is gonna, if they're gonna show it, it's gonna be like pretty close to when it's coming out. And if they showed at the end of this year, I feel like it's pretty likely that it's going to release next year, like finally, after all this time, because it'll be at that point almost 11 years since Persona 5 release, which is a super long gap between mainline games. Yeah. And I kind of get why it was long, but at the same time, like, it'd be nice to have shorter gaps like we used to have, like, because I know Persona 3 and 4 only had like a 2-year gap, but I know development's not exactly this, as similar to how it used to be back then. A lot of stuff has changed.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, P3 and P4 were sort of built off of each other, whereas, like, P5 was, like, moving to a new platform.
Brand new engine.
You know, new engine, new platform. I think for me, it's, like, it's curious, though, because I think especially after playing Metaphor and, like, seeing a lot of the innovative things that game did, it's, like, for me, I'm at with P6 where it's, like, I know I'm going to be excited and enjoy it, like, you know, pretty much for no matter what, but, like, it's going to be very hard for me to be, like, oh, yeah, this tops. Like, I think that's the other part of it is, like, they know they have to, like, go all in, be super innovative on this game. So it's like, for a lot of it, it's like, how do you top P5 Royal? How do you top Metaphor? How do you top, and I think, you don't necessarily, like, you have to, like, be better, but I think, like, if especially because of, like, how much is riding on P6, especially from, like, hype perspective of, like, fans, I feel like you really have to have this game in a state where people are, like, blown away again. Like, you know, P5 was, like, such a huge cultural thing, blew a lot of people away, and I think it's, like, they have to work so hard to, like, capture that again with a P6, and I think that's, like, another thing that's, like, there's a lot riding on this that, like, I'm sure is, like, a monumental task for them.
Yeah, no, expectations around Persona 6 is definitely going to be pretty big considering like what they've released prior and even like more recently with Metaphor. It's one of those games that we'll eventually see, but I really hope they can deliver on it because it'd be really unfortunate if we've waited for like over a decade and the game ends up being something that we weren't expecting in like any kind of disappointing way or like follows anything. Honestly, when Persona 6 finally comes out, I hope it like tries to change up more than what Persona 5 did when it was changing up like how that game worked. I hope we get like some big shakeups in the gameplay department in probably like storytelling because I feel like we followed like a pretty like familiar format of like there's this character that betrays you later on in the game, like because with Persona 3 you have that, with Persona 4 you have that, Persona 5 you also have that.
Yeah, and like the character like starting sort of from nothing, starting over, a new life, etc.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's like sort of like the main theme of Persona, but I do agree that like I think a narrative shakeup would be really nice. I think something that like personally I've always sort of really wanted, because there's always sort of like this sort of not that I enjoy those social links and I enjoy the plots, but there's always sort of that like dissonance where it's like you could hang out with like a character and like max out their social link, right? And then like in a scene later, the game kind of has to account for it's like, oh, we don't know how far you really got along with your social link, so the character has to act or like behave a certain way, even though you're like, whoa, I did a social link and like they sort of like got over that or like they sort of come to terms with that. And I feel like something I'd love to see is like social links sort of interwoven with the narrative a little bit more. And I think like honestly Metaphor like kind of did that in a way where it's like in a way that I thought was like sort of close but not quite there. And I'd really like to see if that was something that they could pull off, is like have sort of the social links and characters sort of like interwoven with the plot. So like, oh hey, maybe this story scene plays out a little bit differently if this character's social link is maxed out or blah blah blah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, even though that would be like a lot of work to do because you would have a bunch of social links to program all of that for, I think it'd be a really cool idea and like just a way that makes the game feel much different than how previous entries feel. Because like you said, any social links you do in the game, for the most part, they don't really impact the main story at all. They're kind of just their own side stories. And most of those characters you don't really see show up in the plot like ever again, besides like maybe one scene towards the end or like when you're saying goodbye. But yeah, no, it's something I feel like that'd be really cool if they did, have like all these side characters be more like intertwined with the plot and be more active in the main story. But I'm not sure exactly how far they're willing to go with that, but I would love to see it personally. And on the main topic of changing, like just how these games work and stuff in specific ways, I think it'd be really cool if we finally got like a brand new like female pro tag after all this time, because the last one we got was over a decade ago.
See, it's interesting because it's like, obviously what they said with Reload, and it's like, I get it, because like obviously a lot of work was put into Reload, and if you did a female pro tag, that's a whole nother batch of social link dialogue you have to do. You have extra cutscenes you have to reanimate, and like, yeah, I mean, was I heartbroken we didn't get the FemC in any like official capacity for Reload? Like, of course I was.
It
but
does
I also
suck.
understand from the development standpoint that it's like you're not making like an extra game, but it is like sort of doubling what you kind of have to do in the game. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think like even if there's not an option, I would hope that there is a female protagonist in the next one. I just think we are overdue. I think it'd be nice to have a female protagonist like who isn't like optional, you know, because technically the femc, even though they sort of exist, they kind of like don't at the same time. It's weird. So I would like to see a female protagonist. I think that's something really big that I would like to see as well. I'm trying to think, like, I think the other thing is, like, obviously I hope they kind of borrow some things from Metaphor, because one of the things I really liked about Metaphor is, like, obviously with Persona party members, they sort of, like, fill their niche. Like, this is the healing character, this is the fire damage character, this is the character who gives your team buffs, right? And, like, that's not bad, because you still have team combinations of, like, oh, I can run this guy and this guy. But the thing that really piqued my interest in Metaphor was how, like, sort of interchangeable all the party members were, where it's like, I can customize them so much. It's like, I can get this ability on this guy, I can get this archetype on this guy, and I can change this out anytime I want, and I don't have to go back to the Velvet Room or, like, a place to do it. I can just go to the menu, swap things around, and, like, that to me was like, oh man, like, I wish that was, like, a thing in Persona, because, like, I get it, in Persona, the protag's a wild card, he can swap all the Personas, but it'd be cool to have, like, some ability to sort of, like, you know, rotate out features or, like, customized characters gameplay-wise more in Persona games. Like, in PQ, they do have, like, a sub-persona and a persona. Maybe even something as simple as that would be nice to have, right?
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because it would be really cool to have, like, more customization. I mean, not, you know, necessarily you don't need, like, all your party members to wield multiple personas. You know, that should just be the pro tag, just to make them feel special. But, like, in terms of, like, more customization, ATLUS is kind of, well, actually, this game wasn't really worked too much on by ATLUS, but it's weird that I'm kind of making this comparison, but Persona 5 The Phantom X recently added the Velvet Room twins, which how they work is they have different personas that they use. So, like, you have the Jack brothers, basically. They have, like, two different skills, like, merged together. So you have one skill that you're using is a fire and an ice skill, and then you have a wind and an electric skill together, and they have, like, basically different combinations for, you know, different personas that could fit, like, whatever specific role you're looking for. And they can also, you know, do stuff like heal, buff, debuff, and use, like, almighty skills, which, I mean, you know, that's a lot to put into one character. But, like, taking some notes from that and maybe, like, changing up how party members work would be nice, because, you know, like you said, they only fill, like, specific areas, you know, because you have your electric user, which is going to be given, like, specific buffs and stuff and certain moves that you're going to only use in certain situations, which leaves pretty much most people to bench party members that might, you know, just not be worth using later in the game. So yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you brought up P5X, because something that caught my eye when I was playing that game actively was, like, every character has, like, their own little mini gimmick, where it's like, oh, this character builds up stacks of this, and then at this amount of stacks, like, then their next thing will do more, or, like, at X amount of stacks, or they have, like, a resource. It's like, I think of, like, there's this one psychic girl, I forget her name, but it's like, oh, you use this to get tea leaves, and then when you have extra tea leaves, you can spend those, and your healing's buff. Like, I think, like, genuinely speaking, the gimmicks for, like, the characters and, like, having their own sort of unique resource or, like, system was, like, something I really liked about the character design in P5X. That'd be something I would not mind seeing used in, like, a P6, because I think it just makes it more, it adds, like, a level of depth to, like, each character that, like, wasn't something you would have actively been thinking about prior, right?
Yeah, no, actually, I agree with that. I feel like they can definitely take some, like, specific aspects of P5X and, like, put that into, like, the next mainline game. Like, for example, this isn't exactly like what we were mentioning earlier, but, like, in P5X, you can have the main character, like, you know, change whatever costume they want out in, like, the real world, and that's not something you can do in any Persona game, which I always thought was really cool.
Yeah, the customization features, right?
Yeah, there's so much. But yeah, no, I think changing how characters work in that way that you mentioned would be really cool, and definitely shake up the gameplay, because not everyone is going to be interested in, like, a live service game, which is understandable. But if you put some of the ideas from that game into, like, a mainline game, which more people are probably going to be playing, you know, that would definitely be something brand new and exciting for a lot of, you know, people getting into Persona 6.
Yeah, because it's like I think at this point, because we've had P5 for almost over a decade, and I think it's like, okay, it's not like it's like, I think people want P6 to be something that's not just P5 again in terms of like how it's presented and how it feels gameplay wise, because I think like, you know, P5 again, would it still be fun? Would it still be a great time? Like, obviously, you know, because, you know, I still love playing P5. But I think, like, after this amount of time, people kind of want, like, something big, something new. Where it's like, I think if it just came out where it's like it'd be like a Metroid Prime 4 situation. Where it's like, there's been so much time between games. And, like, if you release another game in the series that's just, like, this sort of the last game, but, like, kind of, like, again, or, like, a slightly better, I think people would be like, I mean, it was fun, but I think there'd be sort of a letdown in response of, like, man, I kind of wanted something, like, more, something more unique, something more grandiose maybe. But again, I do think, like, I wouldn't say, I do think my hope is, like, I don't think P6 is in a situation like base P5 where it was in like a development hell. I really don't think this P6 is in a development hell at all. I think it's just Atlus has been focused towards like other releases, like I've said, and I think they just don't want to talk about it until they're absolutely sure it's ready to go. So yeah, I do have a really high hopes for P6 in that regard, because I don't, to me, I just don't see it as like something where it's like, oh, they're struggling with it, they don't know what to do. I think they know what they want to do, it's just they're not ready to talk about it yet.
Yeah, you just have to wait for the right time to finally announce it, and hopefully that comes soon, because, you know, we've all waited over pretty much a decade at this point. But yeah, so that's kind of most of my thoughts on Persona 6. I'm really excited to, hopefully we see something later this year. I would love to see like any kind of teaser, even if it's a small one. And yeah, that's kind of just how I feel.
Let's finish, like, sort of wrapping up. I wanted to bring them up just like two more topics. One is like other Atlus releases this year. Do you think they're just all in on Persona? Do you think we're gonna get maybe like a Metaphor Switch 2? Like, do you think there'll be any other like sort of Atlus releases adjacent that aren't Persona focused? Because, like, you know, SMT5 Vengeance came out not too long ago. That's already out on everything. Obviously, like I said, Metaphor getting ported to Switch 2 would probably be like a big one, decently. What else? Really, I don't really like. I think because they're so heavy on P3 or the Persona 30th, I can't imagine them like throwing too much stuff that's not related to it out. But I'm just
they definitely won't.
Do you think there'll be anything not Persona related from Atlus?
So, I feel like the one possibility I can see is, like you said, Metaphor on Switch 2, because that feels like the most likely thing they would do. I also remember seeing in I think it was the end of year development interviews, they mentioned that there probably won't be anything SMT for a while, because, you know, they're working on whatever is next for the series, and also just whatever they're planning on doing in terms of like previous games and stuff. So we're not going to be seeing anything SMT for sure this year. I can definitely guarantee that, because, you know, the developer said we're not going to be seeing SMT for a while, so I'm going to take their word for it. But I think the only other announcement we could see that's not Persona related this year is a Metaphor Switch 2 port, and honestly, I think that's kind of it. I don't really see. Well, I guess there is one other thing, but it's honestly a long shot. I think it was a long time ago they announced, I think it was a brand new Etrian Odyssey game was going to be coming out eventually, and I don't think we've ever seen that. I might be wrong, but
I mean, if there was, it could have been something where like maybe they were considering it and they were kind of waiting on the sales of like what that collection was. Maybe it's something they have on the back pedal, or like something that they just don't think is the right time to release. Maybe that could be definitely something. But yeah, I think it's gonna be hard to see it for anything Atlus that isn't Persona related, obviously because of the anniversary. Do you think we'll get, like, obviously we talked about the fitness boxing earlier. Do you think there'll be like another spin-off that isn't like a port? Like, I'm trying to think what they could really dip their toes into. I know everyone's like, oh, we want Persona 5 Arena after like for so long. I think like
it's not gonna happen.
That ship has sailed. Like, we're closer to P6
unfortunately.
now. Unfortunately, yeah. I think Arxis is very obviously busy with other things. I'm trying to think, like, is there any other like spin-off, you know, like maybe a genre they haven't tapped into, maybe something else? Because like I'm trying to think of like what they could really do for a spin-off, and like other than the ports we talked about, I don't know.
I mean, there's always that idea of a racing game, but we have Sonic Racing Crossworlds, which kind of fills that.
Yeah,
so, like,
it does have Joker in it. Yeah.
There isn't really a point to doing a racing game. I feel like this might sound crazy. I feel like they might be done with Persona 5 spin-offs finally. I think we're finally done with P5 spin-offs.
We're sunsetting. I think we're sunsetting. Like, I think they.
Phantom X feels like the perfect ending.
Yeah, Phantom X big. Obviously, we had Tactica not too long ago. That game's great. That's like a different genre. I just think they're starting to quote-unquote sunset P5, because I obviously I just think like P6 is just, it's not imminently coming out, but like we're gonna get big news on it.
It's decently close. Yeah.
I guess collaborations is the only last thing I can think of.
boy.
Any collabs. I mean, we had Joker and Crossworlds. They had like decals in some random they're doing a random gotchas. Obviously P5 Persona Fortnite. See, here's
Please,
the thing
for the
about
love
that.
of God.
Like, as much as I meme, my issue is like they just did that collab with Overwatch 2, and I don't know if there's like a clause where it's like, oh, if you're in Overwatch or another shooter, you can't be in Fortnite at the same time. I don't know what the rules are regarding collabs like that. I don't know, like, do you think there's gonna be any like collaborations like that are like outside of like gacha games that like could happen or something cool like that? I don't know. I mean, obviously it's like Fortnite's the only one I think most people would care about, right?
Yeah, it's in terms of how the Overwatch situation is. We've had series like One Punch Man get like collabs, oh, and My Hero get collabs in Overwatch 2 before Fortnite, and then they finally came over. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. It just really depends on if Sega and Atlas are smart enough and want money if they want to actually do a collab. Because the way they handled the Sonic stuff was pretty terrible, because all you got was like car decals, some wheels, and some overpriced shoes that no one's gonna see for most of the match anyways. But yeah, no, I feel like if they're gonna do any collab that would, you know, be huge for a lot of people, it would be Fortnite. But in terms of other stuff, I feel like it's just gonna be a bunch of like random series or games we've probably never heard of, like restaurant collabs, you know, the usual stuff you would see during anniversaries. But hopefully we finally get to see that happen in terms of Fortnite. I don't know. It's kind of really up to Sega and Atlas if they want to do it, because I think Epic Games is more willing to like work with them. You know, I think they'd be happy to have the series in, because there's been a lot of demand for it over the years, and I think a lot of people would appreciate having those series finally represented, because it's, besides Smash Brothers, it's like one of the biggest crossovers ever in like any game. So yeah, no, I think that's like the only like huge collab you could really drop this year, and then you would just see like a bunch of other smaller stuff. But what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard because it's like I'm in the same boat of where it's like a lot of the stuff that like I'm really like super invested in is like stuff that like I don't see like Persona crossing over with, and it's like, you know, I don't play too many mobile games, so it's not like I you know, if like they did a crossover some like gacha that I don't play, it's not like I'd be excited. I think for me, what I just hope is like, you know, when they say like, oh, we have announcements spaced out during the year, I just want those announcements that are like on the website or wherever they're spacing out, I just want them to feel meaningful and like sizable. Like, you can announce your collabs and your merch, but don't have it be like, oh, at this date, new announcement, and like, because that sort of like has expectations to it. I think you can announce as many collabs and like merch stuff as you want, but just like be more low-key about it. Just be like, hey, if you're interested, this is here, and not something that you need to make a grandiose like website announcement for, because it's like, for me, I think that's the mistake that they'll run into if they try to recapture what they did with like the last anniversary we got, you know what I mean?
Did that a lot with the last anniversary. We waited like I think it was like the end of February. It was the very last day, and it was like one of the last few hours of the day too, and then they finally dropped like, here's this random collab for some merch company you've never heard of, and I'm just like, cool, thanks man, appreciate it.
Yeah. But you know, other than that, like, yeah, I guess that like kind of wraps up my thoughts and feelings on this year for Atlus and Persona. Like I said, I think obviously P4 Revival and P6 are like the biggest topics for sure. I really do think like we're gonna see both of them this year. Release dates are just what I'm not sure about. I'm absolutely sure we're not getting P6 this year. That's or next year earliest. P4 is the one I'm like, I have no clue. Other than that, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what it holds. I'm excited to see, you know, I hope my expectations are, like, broken, or, like, you know, we do get at least announcements that feel sizable, like, you know, P1, P2, PSP ports, etc. Is there anything, like, you wanna add, like, your just general feelings?
Just in general, just kind of a recap. I feel like this year we probably will see Persona 1 and 2 finally make the jump to consoles, because that's kind of, like, the next big thing you would want to do in terms of just like porting and remastering old games, and I think they would do that before obviously they would decide to remake those. Yeah, so I think that's probably one of the more likely announcements this year, because it would take not much effort and it would be pretty easy to do, and those games I'm pretty sure don't really have much voice acting anyways. And then you would have yeah, obviously Persona 4 Revival getting some sort of trailer sometime this year. A release date obviously is up in the air, because you don't really know how far along that game is. And then yeah, Persona 6 is hopefully something we see near the end of the year, but that's kind of really all I feel about in terms of announcements. I don't think they're really going to do anything else too significant. I hope I'm proven wrong, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
All right, yeah. Very much feel the same way about everything. So we'll see what the future has in store. Once again, Nathan, go ahead, tell people where they can find you. You know, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So if you want to find me, you can follow me on Twitter at nsupergamerguy. I also have a YouTube channel, which will be probably in the description or somewhere. And then I also have a Twitch, which I sometimes stream whenever I am not working. Which also, I think it's just Nathan Super Gamer Guy. You'll find it. I have a link tree somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah, and
No,
I'll link
that's pretty much
everything
all
in
you
the
can find me.
description as well. But yeah, thank you, Nathan, for joining me. I had a great time, and I hope the rest of this year is exciting. Like I said, we'll both be at the Persona Live. We're doing a Saturday showing, right? So we'll be on the
Yeah,
Persona Live Saturday showing in
8
like a couple
p.m.
days, which is super exciting. I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm probably gonna lose my voice. But
Same.
you know what? Real quick, hey, if at that concert they're like, we're gonna do more shows at other places, that'd be awesome too. I would love more people to get to
That'd be
experience
awesome.
it. So yeah, but yeah, thank you so much, Nathan. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you enjoyed listening. Thank you guys, and we'll see what happens. Peace out.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Bye.